So today I wanted to talk about the prodigal son, also called the lost son or the wayward son, and how it relates to the end times and last days and the world today and unbelievers and sinners and Christians. So this is kind of good. It's going to be like a devotional because this video is going to be full of questions for you to think about. They're like application questions, interpretation questions, and basically we're just gonna dissect the word. And I love parables, and I want to share one of my favorite ones with you. I just hope that this is not the last one I share. There are many more that I eventually share, and I just pray that you are blessed by this and you are able to learn something new about this parable. So the parable is in Luke 15:11-32. So please bear with me as I read it. I'm also going to post the passage in the description, so you can skip this whole reading thing unless you want to watch me read. Okay, so this is Luke 15:11-32. Okay. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, please give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father, and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened cow and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of his servants and asked what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fattened cow because he has him back safe and sound.' The older son became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened cow for him.' 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this son of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.'" That's the parable. Good 2-minute read. So I'm gonna talk about it. I'm gonna basically talk about it verse by verse, but not like each single verse. But I'm gonna clump things together, so it's not like a hour-long video. So these are my notes to show you. I wrote stuff down on each section stuff. So Jesus talked about this parable when the Pharisees were, as usual, trying to make him look bad, but they never win. And Jesus was sitting with people, outcasts of society, like prostitutes and tax collectors, people that were not liked. And Jesus started talking about this parable. And this parable is about God's love, how compassionate He is, and yeah. So okay, so I'm gonna talk about a little history too. So in verse 12 it says, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So this is kind of like a will. So like the will, you give it out when you die to your children. So in the Middle Eastern time, during Bible times, Jesus time, the older son got 2/3 of the estate, and the younger son, or inheritance, and the younger son got 1/3. So the younger son was already asking for this inheritance that he was already set to get. But I think that was disrespectful was that his father was still alive. So it was frowned down upon to ask for your inheritance while your father was still alive. But the parable doesn't say anything about exactly how the conversation went on. But this is a parable. It's not like a true story. A parable is supposed to help you think and stuff like that. So that's one historical thing to know. So right at the beginning of the story, the son is already like a little crazy. So and then in the next verse, it says that he fled to a distant country. So assuming that this is like for the Jewish people, distant country means away from your father's house, away from your father's faith, away from God, into paganism or other cultures and worshiping idols and other gods. So the son has already disobeyed his father and being already greedy, and then he's already fled the country to really be lost. And this is how his journey of being lost starts. And it says he squandered his wealth in wild living. Basically, unbelievers squander in wild living, but Christians too can squander in wild living. We squander our wealth in wild living by, not being obedient to God, not using our gifts and talents the way that we were supposed to. Like, think about it. Like, if all these rappers and musical artists, they've all been getting great gifts, right? But imagine if all these people sang for the glory of God. This would be a totally different place. But that's what happened. People go away from their father's house, but the father still waits for them to come back. And that's what they do. They squander their wealth in wild living. The verse doesn't specifically say exactly what the son was doing, but later in the parable, the older son was talking about him dealing with prostitutes or something. So that could be why. But like, you never know. Wild living could be anything. Could be gambling. Why didn't he go out and invest in something meaningful? But Jesus was trying to make a point of what happens when we step out of his will. And then a famine came about. So like a famine, like I feel like sometimes when we go out of God's will, sometimes God will put a famine into your life where you have no choice but to eventually come back to him. And eventually this is what drives the next one steps for the son to come back home. And then the son, first of all, didn't go straight home after the famine, right? So he went to seek out other people to help. This is a way that Christians, people like man, just in general, we are not seeking God first. Usually we go to other people first because they're closer and like we can hear them better or something. And so this shows that we are not initially reliant on God when we are lost. And then in verse 17 it says that he came to his senses. And came to his senses to me sounds like he wanted to repent and he realized what he was doing wrong. He realized, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Everything I'm doing is leading me to my death. This guy is starving in a pig pen and no one wants to give him anything. There's nothing more desperate than that. So, and then he started rehearsing what he wanted to tell his father. Oh my gosh, what did he say? I've sinned against you, blah blah blah. So he rehearsed this whole line. And when he meets his father, he's going to say this line. And but when the son started journeying back to go home, the father sees the son and he starts running to his son. In the Middle Eastern times, the older men wore long robes, and it was also frowned upon to lift up your robe and show your feet. Not showing your feet was a sign of what is the word? The sign of expressing your dignity and royalness and stuff. So just that action alone shows how compassionate this father was, that he doesn't care what he has to do to grab his son and say welcome home. And so as the son is hugging or whatever, he's saying that this line that he had rehearsed when he was about to like die basically, and he didn't get to finish this line, which says to me that God is not looking for your words. He's not looking for your speech that you rehearse when you want to come back to him. He just wants your heart and he wants your actions. And the father was moved by the son's actions to come back home. And it says that the father was still saw him from afar. So that means that God was expecting, God was patient, and he was hopeful that the son was going to come back. This is the God we serve. He is amazing. He's awesome, and he's just eager to like watch us come back to him. And it's like one of the sweetest things that I think is just so great about him, that there's no one else like him. That like if you're a parent, like, and your son like or daughter goes somewhere, you feel a little uneasy, and you want your son to come back or your daughter to come back, and before you can have a peace in your heart. So yeah, and then in verse 22, yeah. Oh wait, one more thing. So, in verse 22, the father was talking about putting the best robe on him, put a ring on his finger, give him some sandals, like really hook this guy up. Like this guy was probably stinking of pig poop and like sweat and like everything. Like so I was probably not taking a shower. And here's the father saying, put all these stuff on him, like. And so this verse, the best robe, it reminds me of robe of righteousness. And robe of righteousness is given to a believer when he gives his life to God. All these little things are all hidden symbolism of metaphors of stuff that Jesus is trying to tell about the kingdom of heaven. And a ring on his finger, that's betrothal to Christ, when Christ down on the cross was his proposal to us. So the ring is like, yes, I am engaged to you. I mean, betrothed to you. And the sandals on the feet. So in the Middle Eastern time, in the history, the servants were barefoot. Family members wore sandals. So this is why the son is getting sandals, because he is honored. He is a special member of the household. Yeah. So they celebrated. And Jesus, all these statements that Jesus talks about when he says that, when there's a shepherd and then one gets lost, and once he finds it, it's a joyful thing than already having the 99 ones. And there's two other parables attached to this parable, where one of them is a woman looking for her lost coin. How she searches the whole house. When she finds out one coin, she's just happy and like elated. And this is how the kingdom of heaven is. When a life on earth gets saved, there is great celebration. This is not just a story. This is actual reality. Like heaven is a greater reality than earth. And yeah. So let me see if there's nothing else I'm forgetting. Okay. I guess I actually didn't read the interpretation questions to you. But so then the older son is like, what is going on? And the older son kind of reminds me of the Christian who is part of the church and like feels like he knows God all the way. Like, I've done everything you told me to do, and this kid comes home, sinned against you. And like, you throw a party for him, but I've always been here. And Jesus, well, not Jesus, but the father says, you're always with me, and everything I have is yours. We are co-heirs of the kingdom. We have nothing to lose once we are in Christ. So you shouldn't be jealous about anyone when a soul comes to Christ. This is what this parable is trying to tell us, that we should rejoice about a soul. Just one soul coming to Christ. It's like the best thing ever. And so I hope that this was like a good explanation of the parable to you. And so basically the other points I wanted to say are this. In our reckless lives, when we are far off from God, His grace and compassion always welcomes us back home. And do not resent those who come back to Christ. We should all share in the Father's joy. and our heavenly reward is not threatened. And yeah, there's always something that we've lost that we found that we are so happy. And so there's also application questions. Reflect on yourself. Are you letting your gifts waste away? What things are preventing you from fully focusing on God? In what ways will you welcome back and comfort those in need? Comfort those in need, or even forgive those who hurt you? And how do you think you would have reacted if the Father saw you from afar and you, like, he hugged you? Like, would you be like guilty? Would you be like, oh my gosh, I'm so relieved? Or would you be joyful with him? And last one, is there something you have lost and are patient and hopeful for? Keep praying for your lost loved ones, that they will be found and saved. Bye.